Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Philippa Charlton, the editor of QSR Media, the website and weekly e-newsletter for the QSR and fast casual dining industry. We're delighted to be partnering with Worldline for today's webinar on selecting the right payments provider in the retail and franchisee world, why it matters. We have a very esteemed panel joining us today from Worldline and IPC Europe, and I will now turn over to them to introduce themselves.
So I'll go first. Hi everybody, Simon Aldred. I'm Commercial Director at IPC Europe. I've been part of the team here for just over 10 years, and I have responsibility for procurement and supply chain of a bunch of categories and a bunch of areas, including equipment and the decor, so everything you'd see in a Subway store. A lot of the technology, partnering with colleagues across the Subway system, and then all the stuff you can't see, all the services, so the indirects, insurance, energy, etc. And I'll hand over to Sebastian.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sebastian Brown. From the beginning, I'm the Global Account Manager of Subway IPCE, working since 9 years for Worldline, and I'm located in Zurich in Switzerland. Anthony.
Thanks, Sebastian. Anthony McNulty. I'm a Programme Director in Worldline, 30 years experience in different industries. I lead a team of programme and project managers focusing mostly on our larger, more complex customers. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Anthony. It's wonderful to be able to bring this cross-border team together for today's discussion. So during today's webinar, we will cover the following areas. Firstly, the partnership between Worldline, Subway and IPC Europe. Then the challenges and opportunities behind selecting a payments provider. And finally, the lessons learned when transitioning to a new payments provider. At the end of the presentation, there will be a chance to put some questions to our panel. So can I ask anyone with questions to put them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens, and I will direct them to the relevant panelist. Of course, if you'd like a deeper dive into any of the issues or content we discussed today, just let us know and we can get in touch directly via email. We will also be recording this session in case you miss anything. So with that, I will now hand over to Simon and Sebastian to talk about their partnership.
Yes, thanks, Philippa. Yeah, this is a slide to introduce the companies, quite short from our side. Worldline is a leader in the European payment industry. As you see here, over 20,000 Worldliners across 50 countries are managing over about 1 million merchants with about 35 million terminals. Simon, what about IPC and Subway?
So I'm part of the IPC team, as I mentioned. We are a not-for-profit organisation, and we are owned by the Subway franchisees across Europe. Said not-for-profit, we're governed by a board of directors, which is an elected group of franchisees, and we are an intrinsic part of the Subway system. Subway themselves, I'm sure everyone on the call will know who we are. We're the largest QSR chain by restaurant count globally, been in operation over 50 years, and as a system, as an organisation going through massive transformation as we come out of COVID. Exclusively, and it's important to note this, an exclusively franchised business, and as we get into the detail, you'll understand why that's so important. So probably a few words just around what, from the Subway and IPC side, as we worked in concert to meet the needs of our franchisees, what we were trying to achieve. The key thing I want to try and get across is that we operate, Subway and IPC, we operate in a very complex business system. It is exclusively franchised. We have a really robust and strong development system, which is a compromise of business developers and master franchise systems, but every store is franchised. So we absolutely need to make sure, as our customer who is also our owner, that we deliver the right solution for every franchisee that we work with. We can't ask a market, say the Finnish market, to take a compromise on price or quality or service for the greater good of the European solution. We need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our customers in every market that we operate in. And to do this, we brought together a really a really key team, cross-functional team from all parts of the Subway world, IPC, franchisee support, franchisees themselves, and of course all of the tech community as well. And to support that, we brought in an organisation called CMS PI, which are a payment specialist, and we'll perhaps talk about them a little bit more later and the role they played. But really, we start by defining what our current status was before we could understand where we wanted to move in the future and what problems we were trying to solve. So to give you a bit of a view on that, when we started this process 3-4 years ago, we had, out of all the markets on the screen, only 2 that had integrated debit credit. So we were coming from a fairly immature technology base. We only had 4 deals that were negotiated centrally with payment partners, with limited data and visibility of what was going on generally across Europe. And my estimate is we probably operated as a system with maybe 50 suppliers. And you can imagine the cost and complexity of managing that, and an inconsistent experience for the franchisee, and therefore a really inconsistent experience for our ultimate end user, our guest that comes into the restaurants. So where we wanted to get to was this future state, which was an all-encompassing in-store, sort of face-to-face stack alongside the e-commerce platform as we grow our mobile order and pay and digital channels. We wanted one single integration that could operate across all of these markets, and we really focused on the Nexo standard. So I think we're probably one of the most the pioneers of that standard from a Subway perspective, and certainly working with Worldline. I think we've probably taken the first steps to take this across Europe at pace. As I mentioned, we couldn't have a substandard solution in one market compensating for a great solution in another market, so we had to have that consistency and compelling proposition for all of our customers. We needed compelling and competitive pricing. We needed resilient and robust solutions so that, you know, if a payment terminal goes down, we can't trade anymore. So that is a challenge for us. And local language in each market, so that the franchisees deserve local language support, both from onboarding, but then in life support and technical support. And then an onboarding process that was simple. So to give you an idea of scale, we have in these markets, the best part of 4,000 stores operated by 2,000 individual franchisees, and a combination of probably 1,500 individual business entities that the team from Worldline had to onboard rapidly, simply, and in local language. And doing all that in the framework of zero mandates. So none of this was mandated either by IPC or Subway, because we can't do that. Franchisees are free to choose partners of their choice. So we had to make this solution work for them, and allow them to then kind of sell on and say this is a good service and be advocates for it in you know, for other franchisees. So that's kind of the landscape of where we came from and where we wanted to get to. And the good news is we're making really great progress working with Worldline and the teams across Subway and making that happen live in a bunch of markets that we'll talk about in a minute. And as we go, we're learning, you know, we're taking stock of what we're doing well, what we need to improve on, and we're working with franchisees to get their feedback, which we do listen to.
That's good. Yes, thanks, Simon. Before we start with the overview of what happens, I would like to give you a brief overview of the status quo. As you can see here, we have already rolled out 7 of these 15 countries in scope. These include the heavyweights, Germany and the UK, but also smaller countries like Ireland, like Finland, like Austria and Switzerland. Roughly, you can say that there is about 1 device per location, but there are also larger ones, larger stores with 2 terminals at the same location. And as you can see here, over 1,500 franchisees are owning, meanwhile, more than 2,500 devices. Of these, like you see here, 2,409 are integrated into the POS system from Subway, and the rest are GPRS devices as a kind of backup. And also for the mobile order solution of Subway, which is piloted in the UK in these days, over 1,800 locations have already connected to the Worldline internal PSP called SaferPay. Philippa, next slide, please. Yes. Simon, could you let us know how all started?
Yeah, so we've as I said, we came from a pretty immature approach to payments. That was a combination of the complexity and the resource available. But working with Subway, we realised there was an opportunity really to deliver a much better experience for both guest and franchisee alike. And in doing so, I made the call early on to engage the services of an external payments consultancy called CMSPI. And they've worked all the way through this process and still work with us today, and have been an important component of the relationship we've built with Worldline as well. Bringing that team together was so critical to make sure that we represented the needs of the business, which often conflicted with each other, because we needed one integration which reduced the cost of the Subway brand and the technology team there, but we needed to make sure that that still allowed us to deliver value to the franchisee at store level. So by spending a good chunk of time on business needs analysis, that allowed us to really clearly define and articulate our requirements through an RFP to the various partners and suppliers that we went out to market with. And then we adopted a very classical procurement approach, and as you'd expect from a specialist procurement organisation such as IPC, we have a very robust category management and strategic sourcing process. A lot of that is done with face-to-face presentations, where there was a panel of IPC, Subway and franchisee representation, making sure that first of all the potential suppliers understood our needs so that they could put the best proposal forward. And then once that had happened, through a series of refinement, there was the opportunity to meet face-to-face to do the final pitch. And the net conclusion of that was we went from a pretty big list initially to a short list here, to finally selecting Worldline as our preferred partner for both in-store payments and e-commerce. And e-commerce is such a massive part of our roadmap moving forward as a brand, as you'd expect. If you're in the UK and you're on the new rewards app, Subway Rewards app, you'll hopefully start seeing that our new mobile order and pay app is going live. It's in test at the minute, and we're using the Worldline payments gateway for that, which we're really excited about. So we won, Worldline won the bid, and we have to go through various levels of sign off here. And this one went all the way up to the CEO of Subway. That's how important this is strategically for the brand and our franchisees. And I was delighted that Worldline was successful in that process. We still have the same people and that were part of that bid involved in the project today, which I can't tell how valuable that actually is. So with that, I'll hand over back to you, Sebastian. You can share your experiences from the other side.
Yes, of course. So thanks, Simon. Yeah, and after this finally relieving message, for us in sales, this meant, that we already could start working, even before the contract was officially signed. So that means a project manager was appointed, and we first set up a project team that has to cover really every conceivable area, and when acquiring in these teams, I could tell you, we quickly realized that the name of Subway was very appealing, and relatively quickly, we had a team of almost 20 different departments together, and in addition to these project teams, it was also important and necessary, to set up an internal steering committee, which we updated on a weekly basis, which we asked for decisions, but which we also had to use, for escalations in order to drive this project forward. And after signing the contract, the pilot took place in a branch in Ireland. So we used these pilots not only to test the terminal, but also to pilot the whole process, from ordering via the landing pages to set up in our systems until the delivery to the dedicated addresses. Simon, could you let us know what was the exact reason to choose Ireland as a pilot location?
Yeah, we've got a really strong relationship with the business development team in Ireland, so they understand as well. We know how they operate. They have confidence in our ability to get stuff done effectively. and frankly, they also cut us slack on pilots because things aren't perfect, are they? And they're happy to work, with us on those things. But they also, there was no integrated solution there already, so it was a good market. It was in our local natural languages. We're not in glamorous Switzerland, we're in slightly cloudy High Wycombe, so based kind of in our market in local language, so that helps. And it was the ability for our technical support team, so we have a group of people, 12 people called TechNet, who do all of the first and second line support for the whole range of Subway approved kit for our franchisees. And it meant we could get people on the ground actually working with the franchisee to do those pilots.
Okay, perfect. Yes, and to be honest, this whole thing worked out, and we started to draw up rollout plans and which country will get what at which time. And we were very well advanced until the first Corona cases were reported. And yeah, the whole of Europe was put into a lockdown. And so also we needed to interrupt everything for the time being. So, but we didn't waste any time. We used these months, these lockdown months, to make essential further developments and adjustments so that we were ready and prepared, as soon as we could restart. And then we are, meanwhile, in July, all parties were ready again, and we started directly afterwards the rollout in Ireland, the Netherlands, Austria, and Switzerland. And then, the next major hurdle Simon already mentioned was United Kingdom. Since this is the biggest country for Subway in Europe, but with the help of different communications from Subway, we started the rollout of approximately 1,000 customers in the United Kingdom within 3 months. Today, we can say, as shown on the slides before, that about 90% of all Subway stores in the UK are meanwhile working with our solution. Meanwhile, we have successfully rolled out 2 more important markets with Germany and Finland. Germany was still a little bit more special to the local Gyrocard, but we were also quite able to implement this successfully. And on the agenda this year, smaller countries such as Spain and Poland, they are still waiting to change from the local providers to the global solution. Simon, still any comments from your side until today?
No, I think it's going well. One of the reasons that it's worked well is we brought in some of our colleagues that are focused really on our franchisees. So they're the voice and ears of franchisees, and they spend a lot of time really kicking the tires on the solution before it goes out, the franchisee experience. And throughout this process, we got franchisees involved, testing the portals out, et cetera, et cetera. So I think overall it's been a good experience, and we've taken the necessary corrections as and when needed as well.
Yeah, good. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what is actually the solution we have implemented for Subway? So the biggest advantage in advance, all services are Worldline in-house. That means nothing needed to be outsourced. The Humani XR PinPad, the device, is integrated in the Subway POS. The franchisees also had the opportunity to buy a Yoximo Mobile Flex as a kind of backup in an emergency case. We use an Interchange ++ model for a pricing as the dedicated pricing model. In Worldline, we have our DCC in-house, our in-house service DCC, dynamic currency conversion, where we are able to convert 47 different currencies into the local one. As said, Subway is launching a new application that means order via an app, payment via an app, and pick up at a dedicated store. And we use the Worldline internal PSP called SaferPay. Each franchisee, of course, has its own reporting tool called My Portal. We created for the different markets an onboarding tool, in different languages where we uploaded all the necessary document for an AML check. And what I will talk about later, we activated also a consultation team to answer questions prior to onboarding. Next slide, please. Yeah, so how does this onboarding process of each franchisee work? As I said, we have created a portal for the different markets, also in different languages, where we can obtain all the necessary information and documents for the individual dealers. And these customized landing pages were prominently displayed in the intranets of IPC and Subway. That means that every franchisee who was interested in this solution is taken directly from the intranet to the onboarding pages. And we know that these requirements for the AML or KYC check can sometimes be very complex. So we really tried to simplify things as best as we can. We included hints, we created links to other homepages, and we use speech bubbles to explain the meaning of some sentences in our contracts. And all in all, to be honest, this has eased the onboarding quite a lot, and it worked quite well. And then after submitting all these necessary informations directly via this portal, a dedicated service desk checks all the documents and enters all the available data into our respective systems. And our terminal hubs in all these respective countries are then notified internally via our system, and the device is sent to the delivery address. It's also worth mentioning that all devices were pre-configured in advance, so that the terminal only needs to be connected to the power supply and the cash register at the store. And yeah, however, should this not work, under any circumstances, the franchisees had also the possibility to call our service center for help.
Sebastian, on just on this one,
yeah,
if you cast your mind back to those early days where I think Michelle and Aurelia would have been on calls with you guys going, you really should do it this way. And I can remember the faces of your team going, this is not how we do it with other people. This seems a bit crazy. But I got to be honest, you listened, you trusted the team, and you reflected that. And I know that you had to re-engineer a lot of processes in the background to accommodate kind of the scale of a franchise system that we are. I'm fairly confident now that if you can do it for us, you could do it for pretty much anybody. And if I'm honest, that's an experience we have with all of our major partners, where we onboard lots of individual stores and entities en masse. I think one of our skills is helping organisations and partners like yourself get better at managing organisations like us.
So Simon, thanks for the flowers. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please, Philippa. Yeah. And here you see, in order to ensure that the processes of this project, run more or less smoothly, various teams are involved. As I already said, this consultation or franchise team, which has very successfully dealt with question prior to onboarding. The franchisees had the opportunity to leave their contact details on these created landing pages, on these onboarding portals, and our franchise team then called them back promptly and tried to clarify all questions, clear up any doubts, or even run through all the documents and prepare the documents for the onboarding team. Then the onboarding team itself, which I already said, which is responsible for the correctness of the contract document and to the setup in the respective systems. Next, our operations team, which informs about the respective progress. That, for example, means how many franchises have been onboarded, where are the terminals, are they already sent out, or how many stores are already live with this solution. And last but not least, there are of course always technical problems which could raise or which could be, as well as question about payouts or reimbursement or settlements or whatever, so administrative terms. And also for that, our support teams take care of this. And this slide, also should show that continuity and communication is very important, because these are all internal teams, and due to that we did not need to outsource anything, we have been able to solve many challenges quickly and effectively. Simon, something from your side?
Yeah, I think it's a good summary of the situation. I think you guys took a lot of feedback throughout this process on making sure that you did understand our franchisees and respond. And I think the early days were pretty tough at some times going through this. There was, as I said, different ways of working, but you've taken the feedback, you have improved and continue to improve. And in our system, when things go wrong, they go wrong really quickly because of the scale that we operate at, and they can get noisy very quickly. And quite rightly, our franchisees are demanding, very demanding, because this is their personal money that they've invested in their own organization. So they demand and should get the best from us all. But yeah, I think the other thing I appreciate, which I mentioned earlier, is that it has been the same core account and project team end to end. It's helped with not having to go back over the same problems over and over again and re-educate people as we go. It's the stability, both in the Subway team, the IPC team, and the Worldline team, has really helped with this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Philippa, next slide, please. Yeah. And and despite all continuity and communication, of course, there were also things where we had to learn our lessons. Of course, the regular discussions and weekly business reviews with Subway and with IPCE helped quite a lot. And Simon was, and thanks for that, was never too shy, to share and always give very constructive and very professional feedback. And these 3 points, we have the feeling, have emerged, in the course of this project, and we are already working on them. So first thing is definitely we need to expand our SLAs and reporting capabilities. We need to have a higher focus on an automated onboarding. That means more customized and more country related, since there also are many differences. And of course, we need also to propose more training sessions for our internal systems. Like I said, each franchisee has its own reporting tool, and to clarify questions in advance, as more the franchisee, the merchant, is able to watch on its own, as less is a service center. So and these 3 things, we really learned, and the feedback of Simon and IPCE and Subway really helped us, that we have task for the future. And as said, we are already working on those things. Anthony, would you like to continue, please, with the lessons learned?
Thanks, Sebastian. Yeah, of course. And what I would like to do is to share with everyone some more generic lessons learned, things that as you're looking at a new service, a new solution, a new provider, hopefully looking at Worldline, that these are things that I recommend you have front and center. And these are lessons that we've learned. So as I said in my introduction, I lead the team of project managers across a number of our larger customers. These lessons have not been easily learned, and they've gleaned over a long period of time and sort of honed into our delivery model. Let me share some of these things with you. The first thing is, and it may sound a little bit cliche, but you're not on your own. And what I mean by that is there's different ways that provider can deliver a solution to you, or you as a customer can take on or onboard a new service. That some providers will just give you the manual, the technical manual, and you're pretty much on your own. I sort of refer to that as a Salesforce model, because that's how Salesforce was always delivered. It's up to you to understand all your user journeys and what sort of technical requirements those translate into, and you know, how to do the accreditation testing and things like that. So I think it's important to understand your provider and what sort of delivery model they have. In our case, in Worldline, it's much more about going on the journey with you and putting the right people and the right teams in front of you so that we can understand your requirement much more detail. This is after you've gone through an RFP, after you've selected, you know, hopefully selected Worldline as your provider. It's all about how we engage with you to absorb your requirements and deliver a solution to you. And I think it's really important to understand what type of provider you're looking at. Is it a, here's the manual, get on with it, or is it a provider that's on the journey with you and into the detail from the start? Different models work for different customers, I have to say. And sort of following on from that, it's really important. I really recommend you've got to really prepare your business. As you're going through an RFP and you're selecting a provider and you're coming to the end of that, and you have your preferred provider, it's really important to prepare your business. What I mean by that is you've got to free up the right people at the right times to engage with the provider. And that may sound pretty obvious and pretty straightforward, but something that we see that customers find to be a real challenge. And that can be freeing up people from your CIO or your chief finance officer to subject matter experts and your payment journeys, or technical experts, or experts in your finance systems. You've got to free up the right people at the right times and give them the time to do the preparation they need to do, and then to answer takeaway questions and actions. And the reason that's important, so that we can build our model of your requirements in the finest detail. What that leads to is a delivery program that has less change in it. So it's really important to free up the right people very early on. We do that through our design discovery phase, where we come with a model of workshops. We know pretty much most of the workshops we want to have with you. We discuss that with you. And in those workshops, you have to have the right people there. So do we. So we've got to have the right people there to make that worthwhile. We do some of the talking. You do most of the talking. We write down a lot of things, and then we all split off with actions. So that's why it's important to have the right people there. Another lesson learned, if I make it a little bit more specific, if I think about the card not present and the card present scenarios, if I think of card not present, this is your online transaction service, your e-com story. Big thing in the UK recently has been the 3D Secure 2.2. And for anyone that's not, familiar with the jargon there, this is the when you buy something online, you have to have a PIN code sent to your mobile phone. You've got to then put that PIN code into your payments page for your issuing bank to accredit or to authenticate you. There's been a lot of movement in this in the start of 2022. And one thing that we've found with our customers, and that we've been working, to find good solutions for, is finding a common way of understanding how these solutions are performing. And so my recommendation is you build a common test environment, a common test team, ideally, right, in the ideal world, sitting in the same room. Obviously that has had its challenges, maybe becoming easier for us now. The reason for that is because when you do an online transaction in this new world of 3DS 2.2, and a PIN code is sent to your phone, there's lots of variables. There's your mobile network, different mobile networks operate different ways. There is whether the user has their phone unlocked at the time, or whether they've got to put in the screen unlock. There's a time it takes to type the code, or read the code and type it. And only if customer and provider are sitting looking at the same thing at the same time can they really get a good understanding. So that's an area I recommend if you're involved in the online and the card not present story, then that's an area I recommend you spend some time on with your provider. And certainly we've been working collaboratively with some of our larger customers at the moment for that, to build that joint testing team, and that's been successful. If I look at the card present, so you know, the lessons learned, and myself and some of the colleagues had a good scratch for the head here to think what good lessons learned, and the answer is this is probably our most mature space. This comes from our background of delivering terminals, you know, PIN pad terminals, but there are some lessons learned that are really live, and I think they may sound very basic, but as you're starting to engage into a delivery phase with your provider, we're finding two big things at the moment. Lead times for network connections are very long. Now that's important because if you were coming to Worldline, at some point you're going to have to connect your data center to our data center, so you need your network provider to get involved. We've had some of our customers reporting lead times of 6 months just in the last few weeks to us. So very long lead time. So my recommendation is, as you're going through an RFP and looking for a new provider, just talking to your network provider, whoever your network partner is, just talking to them, understanding their lead times as early as possible, because certainly that's an area that's been a surprise for some of our customers, that when we sit down and suggest them to look at network lead times, they find that it's longer than they expected. And similarly, a lot of merchants now moving towards Android point of sale, not everyone. We've also found there that some of the integrators or some of the bespoke development houses have longer lead times than you may think. For me, I think Android, I think something that's very quick to develop on, it's open platform, and all these things that give me the impression it would just be very, very quick to deliver. But customers are telling us that from their third parties, from their partners, some of the lead times are longer than they expect. And again, we've had a customer recently given a lead time of 6 months to get some development done on an Android point of sale. So likewise, like the network piece, I suggest you're talking to your providers throughout your RFP phase, and trying to nail some delivery plans as well with your providers. And then just a final thought on lessons learned and some recommendation to you. Different payment providers have different security solutions, different ways that they deal with threats, so different threat management solutions, different fraud detection solutions, different methods for, you know, managing servers and terminals and security. And I recommend you build that into your RFP. You work out what sort of security things are important to you. Maybe you need some consultancy to help drive that conversation. You build that into your selection criteria, and what you may find, what some of my customers have found, there's opportunities where they're then coming back to Worldline and asking us to take on some more of the security services for them. And I thought that was maybe worth sharing with you. So again, in your RFP phase, really be thinking through your requirements around security and really evaluating your potential providers for that as well. In terms of Worldline, you know, we have, I think, a very strong offering there where we can do a presentation to customers and give you a kind of end-to-end view of all the security, and some clever stuff in there that flies over my head, but it would probably appeal to security managers. So that's some of the insight I wanted to share with you. Hopefully that's useful to you. And on that, I'll hand back to Philippa. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Just going back to my 2 points, sorry, on the engagement. Well, just one point I wanted to make, and that's why I put this diagram in here. We've got a number of teams dedicated to bringing new customers in. So with the program management team sitting under myself, we've got a solutions management team with the solution architects and the subject matter experts that understand your payment journeys. And likewise, we've got a dedicated integration team. There's 13 engineers in the integration team. Those guys will work with your POS integrator to really nail the integration between our payment devices and your point of sale. And finally, we've got a dedicated test and accreditation team. It's quite a large team. They're very, very good at understanding at the outset of a project what your accreditation journey is going to look like, how much testing is going to require, how long that's going to take. And we find that that's something that customers benefit from. In the background, as we do your detailed requirements capture. If we realise or we find that there needs to be some development on our, whether it's our online platforms or whether it's in our, it could be our PIN pad terminals or payment gateway, we've got the development teams there. It's all driven by an agile methodology, so we can feed those requirements in, build that into our planning so that we can give you accurate timescales for when different features will be made available, if that's part of it. And then I just want also to mention the bottom right hand side, our service introduction managers are involved actually from the RFP stage. So we're making sure when we're building solutions, that those solutions are something that we can accept into service, that you can accept into service. So there's things in there like looking at the back office tools that Sebastian mentioned earlier, looking at our e-portal solution, so giving you visibility at the early stage from our service team of how you would manage the service from your side, what we manage for you, what you're able to manage self-service as well. And our service managers are part of that. And one of the things we do in our discovery phase is we normally aim to get to about 50–60% maturity of your service manual, and the rest gets matured during the rest of the delivery phase, so that from the earliest phase you know what the service is going to look like, you know how we deliver that service, what our L1 or L2 provision looks like, and how that would integrate with your own teams and your own tooling. And then on that, I can hand back to Philippa. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you all, and thank you so much for what was a really informative presentation for all of you, Simon, Sebastian and Anthony. So now it is time for our Q&A, which I can see coming in at the bottom of my screen. So let's have a look what we've got. Okay, the first one looks like it's for you, Anthony. Can you tell us more about how you kick off a project once you're selected? What do you expect from us as a customer?
Right, okay. Just think through that. So after we've been selected, so as we go into an initial phase, so we would typically be kicking off with a statement of work while the detailed contract work is proceeding. So we get things moving as quickly as possible. And I think that's important to state. We often in that phase, sometimes we'll work at risk if we need to, just to get the momentum into the project. I think I mentioned there, design and discovery. That's what we call our initial phase of workshops. This is the bit I was talking about. We bring all our subject matter experts in, bring all your subject matter experts in and work through a sort of methodology. And what we're targeting there is a program management plan and a detailed project plan, and also a detailed signed off set of requirements that we can then build the solution from, or we will design the solution. So we're able to give you, or we're able to agree a set of requirements, we're able to give you the solution design and the detailed project plan that will deliver that from. And then that falls into the rest of our delivery methodology. And like any organization, we have a delivery methodology. It's a hybrid, it's part waterfall, part agile. I don't think that would surprise anybody in this call, but that's what we do. We engage in our design and discovery, do the planning and the requirements capture in there, and go into delivery. And our target with our model is that we do all the talking up front. And I think I mentioned earlier, so that we're not managing huge amounts of change throughout the delivery. We're always targeting to minimize that change by having all the discussion up front. And I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. And maybe one more, Anthony. You mentioned kind of extended lead times. Is that a function of COVID, or is therefore something you expect to go away as we come out of COVID, or is there something else behind it?
I think I mentioned it in two. Yeah, it's a good question, Philip. I think in the networking side with network providers, that has been fed back via our customers. So we're typically not talking directly to the network providers because the customers have their own chosen partner. And certainly one customer who got a 6-month lead time, whether it was just a reason given by the network partner to the customer or not, because it is a convenient excuse in some regards, but certainly COVID was mentioned in there. And the Android pause side, I haven't heard that used as a reason. My interpretation is there's such a surge towards Android point of sale at the moment that I would imagine providers, solution providers, development houses and integrators are overwhelmed by the surge towards the Android point of sale.
Okay, really interesting, thank you. Now it looks like we have one for Simon. Simon, the question is, what would you do differently if you were to repeat this process?
Well, that is a good question. I think if we go back to the lessons learned that Sebastian shared earlier, I think we would have, as an IPC and Subway team, spent more time understanding the franchisees' needs once we'd gone live, particularly around KPI and their reporting and invoicing needs. Because most of the noise and tension that we've had post-launch has been around that area, and I think we superficially glanced across it and probably didn't represent our franchisees as well as we should have done, and that has caused noise all the way down the line that we're still working on today. So I think that's probably the one thing that has been a big learning for us, for Subway and the IPC team, and something that we've taken forward on other projects, spending more time on focus groups, getting into that level of detail.
Great, thank you. So, Sebastian, did you have anything to add in?
No, Simon, to be honest, what you said, Simon, is absolutely, correct and important, also to address things to us, the exchange between the different parties is, very, very important and necessary. And as said, also we have, learned our lessons from this, definitely.
Wonderful. And actually, we have another question here for you. I think this one, Sebastian. How did you manage the German Gyrocard? And maybe if I can expand that out, you mentioned obviously the complexity of working across so many different markets. What kind of challenges did that throw up in terms of having to manage different systems and different issues?
Yeah. So since especially in the low value business, the Gyrocard is in Germany very present, and so that means also for the Subway stores. And within the Worldline entity Pay One, we are owning our own called Netzbetrieb. And that means that the terminals in Germany, the same hardware, but running on another system, as the rest does. That means we are not acquired, or we do not do the acquiring from the German Gyrocard via the co-brand application, but we have the possibility, due to this own Netzbetrieb, to acquire the Gyrocard as it is, so as the cheaper brand. So this was a huge advantage, not only for Subway, but also for other customers. Yeah.
Great. And were there any kind of similar complications thrown up in other markets?
No, to be honest, since due to local brands, to be honest, local card, it's only Germany. Well, of course, France as well, and some Nordics, but this has been not really in scope. No, due to local brands, Germany was one of the most important markets, to manage, especially this local brand.
I think, Sebastian, that we're working through at the minute how we deploy in France, aren't we? Because we've got similar challenges with the CV platform there. And that goes back to the point that we need to make sure that the proposition is compelling and competitive for every franchisee. So that's causing us some heartache at the minute that I'm confident we'll work through, and we're in a much better place than we were a few months ago on solving that one.
Definitely, yeah.
Fabulous. Yeah, it's such an interesting case study, this, given how many markets and the types and volumes of transactions that you're seeing for any of our listeners and participants looking at potentially different markets and the opportunities and challenges they throw up. Okay, another question coming in for you, Sebastian. What would you say was the biggest challenge in this project?
Yeah. So I would say, that it was the franchise model itself. We needed, and this was of course very different from the project with other major clients. We needed to find a way how to deal with hundreds, or as said, thousands of individual dealers. And the dedicated landing pages, the dedicated onboarding portals in the different languages, and the resources we provided at the right time. This, I would say, was very helpful and make this project a very huge success, because we never know, to be honest, how many franchisees will opt for this global solution. But as you have seen on, I think, slide 7, meanwhile, more than 2,500 terminals are in 7 countries live, and this is a quite huge success, to be honest. Yeah.
Fabulous. And now another one for you, Simon. The question is, what are the biggest benefits Subway franchisees are seeing with these Worldline terminals?
I would say it's the integration. As I said earlier, we in many markets, we came from an unintegrated model. So that level of integration just means that it's much faster at the front counter. So if you've been in a Subway store, and I hope you all have, and I hope you got a Subway rewards card, it's my pitch, you'll know that it's like a production line, that you start at the one end of the counter and walk down, and the sandwich artist holds your hand as you go and asks you a bunch of questions. And then often, and historically, the pinch point for throughput has been that payments experience, particularly as we go from a much bigger proportion of card to cash than we've ever had before. So that operational improvement of integration has made a massive difference for the guest and for the throughput in store, and also, just as importantly, for the sandwich artist. It's a less stressful experience having just hitting a button on the POS and it going straight down to the terminal. That can't be undervalued. So I think that's probably the biggest benefit so far.
Great. And to that point, actually, again, maybe kind of segueing back into COVID a little bit, how much of a transition are you seeing in your stores from cash to card only payments? That must be quite significant.
Yeah, it's massive. At the top of my head, I can't remember the percentages. And if I had Thomas on the call, who's the Subway project manager for Europe, he'd know him off the top of his head. But yeah, it's a massive swing and continues to be so. And it does vary by market. The Nordic markets tend to be, almost getting to 100%, I suspect. The Germanics markets are really taking a step forward because they have been so cash focused historically. And I don't know if you remember, Sebastian, that we had to accelerate Austria out of nowhere because of COVID, because there was the issue around the local legislation saying that they couldn't be double handing of the terminal to avoid transmission of the disease. So we had to quickly change priorities and support that. But the other big change for us as well is our digital strategy. Subway really are investing a huge amount of money globally and specifically in the EMEA region. As I mentioned earlier, with the team have just launched the new mobile order and pay platform, replacing the old legacy one. And that is a massive channel for growth for us as well. So although it's not card payment, per se, it is it's a digital payment strategy, and that's only going to grow for us as we expand and develop within a market, and then Subway deploy that platform across all our major markets in EMEA.
Great, which actually kind of segues into the next question, which I think is also for you, Simon. How much of a difference does the Worldline integration into your POS make in the day-to-day operations of Subway outlets? And how much maintenance work is going on in the background?
So the actual device itself, it really is plug and play. We don't have an engineer go out on site and install these in store. The Worldline team, supported by Subway tech guys and our technology group here, our TechNet team, have spent a lot of time simplifying the process and documenting it really well. So from the outset, it's a plug and play solution. So it gets up and running, in minutes, rather than needing an engineer to come in and schedule that. And then once it's operational, it just works and works really well. Uptime is really strong. And even compared to our previous integrated solutions particularly in the UK, franchisee feedback is that the transaction time, even though we're measuring tenths of seconds, is faster than we've ever seen before, which is an ongoing improvement that we didn't expect, but we're delighted to get as well.
And obviously very important from a customer perspective. No customer wants to be waiting for their transaction to go through. They want it to happen.
Absolutely. And the terminals themselves are seem incredibly robust. They sit neatly and compactly on our front counter, which if you've been in a subway again, you'll know that it's, we don't have lots of space available. So that works really well. Obviously, we're driving contactless and tap and go in all markets as much as possible. So it's a good fit from that perspective, and we're excited to see what we can do from a marketing standpoint, using the terminal and the screen on the terminal, and can we use QR codes, etc., moving forward. So I think particularly as the Subway digital team wrap their arms around where else we can go in this in the future, that'll be great. There's more focus than ever from the global team as well in payments. There's new leadership group there that really is wanting to deliver new and exciting experiences for our guests whilst minimizing costs for franchisees.
Yep, fabulous. And we've got another one coming in for you, Sebastian. It is, how easy was the implementation across multiple markets and multiple languages?
Okay, yeah, to be honest, this was not too difficult, since of course this is also our core business, and our acquiring system, is quite flexible. We are able to manage, actually, I think almost all European countries. We are able to manage or to settle in almost all European currencies. Our terminals are speaking, I think 20 European languages. But of course, languages like Finnish, are not really common for us neither. Yeah, nevertheless, all in all, this was, to be honest, no longer a real problem. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Right, so our time is almost up. I can see some more questions coming through, and I know Worldline will be in touch with you directly to answer those. But whilst I've got all our panelists here, I might kind of ask you if you have any kind of summary, sum up opinions or things to say before we run out of time. Anthony, any comments to add?
I think, Philippa, just for me, it's just be in your RFP, if you're selecting a new provider in your RFP phase, is to be thinking about those types of things I've described there. And there may be a tendency, because obviously very busy in an RFP, maybe have a tendency to think some of those things sit in your delivery phase. But I think you've got to be looking ahead. And as you mentioned, Philippa, things like COVID have brought along some delays and longer lead times. So I think it's just, thinking through those types of things in your RFP phase and not delaying them.
Right. And Simon, any final wrap-up thoughts or comments from your perspective?
Yeah, I guess my reflection, hearing ourselves speak for the last hour, is that this was a technology-led project. It was about payments and the technology landscape there, but it is people that make the difference. So I think we as in IPC and Subway pulled together a really strong team from the outset. We got the right support from our external party CMS, and we've managed to stay together as a team all the way through that. And then that's been mirrored and matched by the team in Worldline. And I think that's made all the difference for us. So it's people that do business, and I think we're in good shape. We hold each other to account, which is important. So even though we've been hugs and kisses on this call, it's not always like that, as Sebastian is smiling, because as he said earlier, we're not afraid in giving feedback, and those guys take it well. And even in our, we have regular monthly and quarterly business reviews, and that's where we can rely on the relationships that we've built to be honest and open with what needs to improve. So I'm proud of what we've delivered as a team, and I'm proud of where we're going to take this collectively, particularly as Subway invest in that digital platform as well. That side is going to get really exciting for everybody.
Great. And maybe Sebastian, for you to round out, any final thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Simon. I really appreciate this. And yeah, as you said, meanwhile, I would say, it's not only a normal customer relationship, it's more a partnership. And you could imagine, the name of Subway is still making really much noise, internal, also on the top management. And as you said, and also me, I'm very proud of this cooperation of this project. Yeah, thanks to all.
Fabulous. Well, so with that, I would like to thank all our panelists for sharing their expertise on what was a huge and multifaceted program. And I'd like to thank you all for listening in. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.